So good afternoon, today is Tuesday, June 9th, 2020. Ooh, what am I'm in a borrowed place here. Am I getting feedback? This is a meeting of the Sutton Finance and Warrant Advisory Committee. It's now 6 o'clock, and I'll call the meeting to order. I've got a statement here that I have to read here first, folks. As a preliminary matter, I am Pat Morris, Chair of the Finance and Warrant Advisory Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. So I'm going to do a roll call of the Finance and Warrant as we get to the various people who will be speaking. Jim Smith, the town manager, will introduce you, and we'll go from there. Elizabeth, I guess you're going to have to unmute.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Sarah.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, George.
Present.
Dan.
I'm here.
I'm here. Jared, I see you now. You're here.
Here.
Thank you. Tony.
Present.
Bob. Bob, I can see you, so I know you're here. Susan.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you very much. So all 9 members are present. This is an open meeting of the Finance and Warrant Advisory Committee. It is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19.
Hello?
Yeah.
You got me, Pat?
Yeah, just mute yourself, Bob. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that they can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting of the Finance and Warrant Committee, convening by Zoom as posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and that you take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by recording. We're now going to be turning to the first item on the agenda. But before we do so, please permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate minutes. As you speak, as you come on, please identify yourself. After each speaker on the agenda finishes, I, as the chair, will go down the line of the members, inviting each to speak. And then in the end, I'll ask if anyone from them has any other questions. And that includes those who are participating other than board members. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the first item and turn the meeting now over to Jim Smith, town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a meeting, I guess it was about a month ago, a joint meeting with the Finance and Warrant Committee and the Select Board. Things are pretty much the same as they were a month ago. We were waiting at that point in time for some indication on state aid. We are still waiting for that indication. This is, very unusual that we wait this long to have any idea. Obviously the governor's numbers that were provided to us in January are no longer relevant to the situation. So we are waiting. But in the meantime, we need to pass a budget. So I assume the state is waiting on the federal government to see if the federal government is going to provide any bailout aid to states and ultimately municipalities. It does seem like there's some indication that there will be another CARE Act out of the federal government, probably at some point in July. So we may have to wait to that point to get the final numbers. Regardless, this is a moving goal right now. So the budget that we approved today or on June 22nd will be revised at the fall town meeting. Hopefully that takes place at the usual time, the third Monday in October. However, we have dealt with the anticipated potential cut in state aid. We have suspended the OPEB policy for the time being, moved that revenue into the reserve fund, which is controlled by the Finance and Warrant Committee. That's approximately now at $170,000. We have level funded state aid, which is a better situation than the governor provided because he increased the state aid by almost $75,000. So we've level funded state aid. We've cut local receipts in anticipation of a potential reduction in, motor vehicle excise tax or meals and hotel taxes that the town collects, various local receipts. I don't see that happening. I think that we will do okay on local receipts. We budget that conservatively, as everybody knows. But again, it's just a conservative measure that in anticipation of pretty much the unknown at this point in time. We have reduced our capital plan, cut it in half by $550,000 to really only focus on what we feel are the essential items. And we do have additional new growth that we could appropriate at the fall town meeting, depending upon what we receive from the state. So again, there's a lot of unknowns. The second largest funding source in our budget is state aid, and we don't know what that's going to look like. However, I think we have enough information to push forward to pass a budget and then revise it at fall town meeting. Tim, do you want to add anything to that?
I think you hit everything, all the high points, Jim. It's a wait and see at this point. But I think passing this budget is better than waiting and doing just a 1/12 of the 2020 budget. This makes more sense.
Yeah, I agree. So that's it, Mr. Chairman, from us. I don't know how you'd like to proceed with any questions for us, or would you like to move into the public hearing process?
Well, let me, do any of the members have any questions of Jim before we start with the presentations? You're going to have to unmute yourself if you do. Hearing none, Jim, why don't we get started with Blackstone? And again, I would appreciate it if you would be kind enough to introduce who's ever speaking so that we can collect it in the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, this is Dr. Michael Fitzpatrick. I've served as Sutton's vocational technical superintendent for 27 years. Prior to this opportunity to share additional information, although we couldn't meet in the traditional manner as we have the 26 times prior, but there have been communications via both phone and email to the town manager with initially predictions relative to estimates of what we thought the assessment would be, then follow-up numbers, and then certified warrant information. In addition to that, as the chair knows, the chair of our budget subcommittee, who is your own Sutton representative to Valley Tech, Julie Mitchell, and I have provided follow-up Q&As to the chair, hopefully addressing the questions that were raised. Given the responses that we received, we certainly would conclude that they did respond sufficiently. The comments made by the town manager and also by Tim, I certainly would support the logic and the prediction relative to what's happening at the state. I also feel it's best for the community and all our 13 communities to avoid the 112 scenario if at all possible, at least to the degree we control it at the local level. The current prediction of the state revenue, it seems to be drawn out until September. So it appears that the state, certainly they're watching federal support, subsidies, and any bailout money provided through multiple sources. But it also, as they look at the picture of the state revenues, your superintendent and I and superintendents across the educational superintendents across the state participate in regular Zoom meetings of this nature to gain greater insight, and also work, of course, in my case, with the 5 state reps and 2 senators and others. But the current prediction is there will be no announcement from the state, or no planned announcement from the state, until they sit back and watch the first 25% of the next fiscal year go by, which would be July, August, and September. So hopefully, certainly by October, if there's a recalibration of something, then you hopefully would know what the state of Massachusetts or the Commonwealth will produce. Some of the things that were highlighted in the communications provided to the chair were some of the cost containment measures that were incorporated by our plan for FY21. We are asking for $90,478 additional dollars in the prior year, and those specifics have been provided. I don't think there's any challenge or question relative to that. The Valley Tech is prepared in the event. We're also living with a governor's number in our budget. It was announced several months ago. But in the event there's a reduction or erosion in the predicted state revenue that we built in based on the governor's number at that time, we will have to absorb that loss. We will not be coming back to the town. We certainly hope you are very successful in CARES Act funding and FEMA funding and MEMA funding and anything else that might be out there. And you have a track record for pursuing that aggressively. But Valley Tech will not be asking for a share of that piece or asking to help us. But generally, we feel that if the communities are asked to accept or address a budget shortfall, then you have your own challenges, and we don't need to complicate that. In some ways, we look at ourselves as the 14th community serving the 13 towns that comprise Sutton's vocational technical district. And so we have to take our lumps, or we have to make our own adjustments relative to that. We'll fight for every dollar. We'll apply for every dollar. We've already submitted a number of applications, and we'll look to do that. We're currently negotiating a contract with our teachers on a collective bargaining effort. And so we're certainly pushing reasonableness, conservative approaches, and reality relative to what might be accomplished. June 30th is the conclusion of the current collective bargaining contract. As we highlighted in some of the changes or adjustments we made for FY21, we self-funded from our excess and deficiency $225,000 to reduce assessments across all 13 towns to bring it to the levels that they ended up to be, and as we advanced them several months ago. We self-funded a roof project to avoid any further debt by our towns, and are in the accelerated reimbursement plan, and would expect to receive roughly $660,000 returned or recycled to us through the accelerated plan, which is a form of recycling money through the Mass School Building Authority and not asking for the debt to impact anyone. We even approached an attorney for the volunteer services associated with filing the applications that the Mass School Building Authority required. We're taking advantage of the fact we don't have students in the building, and the roof repair project has been underway for a good week or so, and that crew is on the roof each day as it goes by. We avoided the need to ask Sutton or other towns for capital money in the same way that the town administrator just highlighted some of the changes you had to address. We could pretty much see the writing on the wall, and so we relied on grants. We were very aggressive in our grant pursuits, securing almost $3 million in grants, and are using that to respond to the need to upgrade our facility, to improve our learning environment, and add additional resources. We had a need to deal with our own snow plowing. not so much snow plowing this year, but usually every other year. And so the budget subcommittee, again, led by Mrs. Mitchell, listened to a presentation by facilities that they emphasized the need for basically a $50,000 truck and plow. Rather than include that in the budget, we went to our alum and other fundraising and raised the $50,000 outside of the budget. All those are some of the things I highlighted for the chair, Mr. Morris, relative to changes. And I know Mrs. Mitchell responded to several questions associated with that. We have no change in that which has been shared in multiple forms. The budget booklet was delivered months ago, hand delivered. There's an elaborate presentation on our website that's been out there for some time relative to the budget. And we have been making presentations throughout the district. At this juncture, only one community has voted. The community of Blackstone voted in an outside town meeting. 77, at the last count that I heard by the moderator, there were 77 citizens present. That was roughly about half of what they normally get in a traditional town meeting. But everything went smoothly, and it was the first outdoor town meeting that I've ever participated, and I think the first one that ever been held in Blackstone. Gradually, communities living within the distance and the other safety precautions are returning to reasonableness, gradually, rather than relying totally upon the remote world. Last I saw the town meetings, we have 11 of the 13 communities that are confirmed to hold town meetings this fiscal year. There's no indication that any of the 11 would not be taking up their finances this fiscal year. For example, on June 22nd, Bellingham, Millville, and Sutton will be holding their town meetings. And so we're optimistic. We have no community or finance committee that has opposed our budget. So we're optimistic that we with Sutton's help, Sutton's support, that we will muster the necessary support and know what we have, at least from the town side or the operational budget side, from our assessments, which certainly is a big piece of the puzzle that's very helpful to us. Are there any questions, Mr. Chair?
Thank you very much. I appreciate you participating and taking time to be with us. So as we have to do, I have to take a roll call to ask the members if they have any questions. So again, if the people will unmute yourself here, if you have, so I know one way or the other. So Elizabeth, I'll start with you.
I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, I just have one question. Are there any enrollment indications in situations where shop isn't able to be done as well remotely as physically? Is there any indication of what the enrollment might do in the fall of 2020?
Well, if I may, Mr. Chair, the interest in coming to Sutton's Voc Tech School continues to be very strong. Okay, there are 298 students who are graduating in the outgoing class, and probably not likely in a traditional form, and there are a little over 300 that are in the acceptance group. There's no indication that we wouldn't continue to accept. We'll certainly have to play by the state's rules. If they expect us to educate 10 students at a time, that would be an interesting challenge. We have targeted one vocational technical program not to accept freshmen, but we're accepting those freshmen in other programs. So we do have one program change, and we're looking to kind of migrate into that biotechnology program as a gradual effort. The vocational technical programs have worked with the vocational technical, their colleagues across the state, if not the nation, relative to online instructions. So, it's certainly challenging, and it's simply not as easy for the students to grasp some of the concepts. But the distance learning and the graphic displays that are all part of our approach, and all the new technologies that the trades use, have been a boon to that. In some cases, there's been some creative efforts. You took the health services program they're actually monitoring COVID cases, live cases, and looking at, the welfare of the person, mental and physical. So we don't expect to, other than the one program that is really not driven by COVID-19, that we would be at a disadvantage, but it will take flexibility by all parties. I hope that answers that.
What class are you going to pare down? Which one are you eliminating, or whatever it is?
It was referred to as an office and technology type. Okay, it's a business and office program. It's our view that as we look at the Chapter 74 programs, that a business office program is better suited to a non-Chapter 74 environment and could be replicated more easily than our other programs with the tremendous infrastructure investment. So business practice or office practice is the program.
Thank you. Anything else, Sarah?
Nope, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. George? George?
No questions at this time.
Dan?
No questions.
Thank you. Jared?
No questions. Thank you.
Tony?
No questions.
Bob?
Good, Bob. Bob, you got to mute.
How am I doing now?
Yeah, you're doing well.
No questions at this time.
Okay, you can just shake your head if you want. Susan?
I have no questions, thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who is participating who has any questions of Dr. Fitzpatrick? Okay, hearing none. I just have one here. You graduated 298. You're accepting 300. So that's simple math. It's an increase in 2. It seems to be going up a little bit each year, but yet I remember not that long ago that you told me you were at capacity and you didn't have room for more students. Where are you putting these extra people?
Well, the fact that 298 students would graduate is not an indication that 298 were taken in. What you have is some of the students and their family have migrated out of the area, so that reduces over 4 years the number of students that actually graduate.
So your overall total population has not grown?
What I believe I responded that the increment has been very small. Okay, so and it continues to be, I'm going to say like a half a dozen type thing. So it's not a major change in the enrollment, but there is a slight increase, okay, in the total planning. Another thing we're trying to do is we've had a lot of requests from, actually the state has encouraged us to do things differently all the time without providing the money to do it, but they're looking for us to consider accepting more students in the 11th and 12th grade to backfill when the event seat becomes available because someone's relocated or moved out or transferred, I guess. Then if there's an opening, the state would like us to take students in a 2-year effort rather than always the only entrance is through the on-deck circle of the 9th grade. So there is not a major change in our enrollment.
Okay, all right. I thank you very much. Jim, anything else for Dr. Fitzpatrick?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Dr. Fitzpatrick, thank you again. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us this evening.
Thank you very much. It's always an honor. I do want to point out that when I described Blackstone, the town of Blackstone voted in the affirmative. So they were our first approved vote for the only town meeting that's been held to date.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank Julie and also, of course, Pamela for her technical assistance.
Okay. So
Thank you, Doc.
Okay.
So Jim, do you want to go to the next one?
Sure.
It'd be the police department.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name's Dennis Toll. I'm the police chief. I've been your police chief for a little bit now. It's been, 14 years. So I think it goes without saying that generally you see, or those are the members that have been on the finance committee for a while, has seen, modest increases in our budget. Primarily, the increases we see are based off of contractual issues, either from, contracts with the unions or contracts with our software people or phone people or something of that nature. Generally, we don't have a big spike or increase in the operating budget, with the exception of this year. You'll see there is a line item that we created for new station expenses. There was approximately $45,000 put into that. And basically, those are all the utility bills, the heat, the maintenance issues, some of the extended warranty issues that we feel we need to pay for, mechanical devices inside the station, water system, rubbish removal, things of that nature that I've actually frankly took for granted because it's always been covered under the town hall as far as our heat and electricity and things like that. So with those issues being addressed in the front of this whole presentation, the only other increases of the budget are, like I stated, contractual issues that we're obligated to pay. A big one, and it kind of gets in my craw every year, is our R&D and computer network company that invariably just raises our maintenance agreement every year, sometimes thousands of dollars. And we've basically become handcuffed to this company because we've used them since the early 90s, and there's not a lot of options out there for us. And that's in the line item ending in 56000 to the tune of $17,000. There are some other issues or costs in that line item, like a live scan, a fingerprint machine that has a small maintenance agreement, a CGIS agreement, which is what we use to connect to the RMV. That's a small maintenance agreement, but primarily that line item covers our software in the station. So without going over every single line item, I guess, I'll open it up to any questions that someone might have.
Thank you, Chief. So once again, I'll go down. Elizabeth?
I know when we've talked about building the station, we anticipated this uptick in these annual maintenance costs. Is this in line with what we had thought it was going to be? Maybe that's a question for Jim. Or are these excessive or more than we expected? And I assume these costs will now be going forward annually.
Right. Yeah, I mean, some of these, frankly, are, I guess, educated guesses. We kind of had like not a difficult year, but like, we only had a couple of months of, summertime electric bills, and, we had, one heating season and, things like that. But in general, I think we've got a pretty good idea of what the new costs will be. And, I wouldn't argue that any of them are excessive. I think it's much like your own home. You're not real happy with your electric bill, but you got to pay it. I do think if we put solar on the building, that'll actually alleviate a lot of that. And one thing I should note is when we moved into the new police station, the entire computer system that was once run up at the town hall that supports the whole entire town, or at least the municipal side, is now housed in the basement of the police station. So I got to guess there's a significant cost for that electricity that's run, and there's a separate room down there that needs to be cooled even in the wintertime. That adds to the electric issue. I think the primary purpose of that whole line item is just to support those utilities, which is mostly electric bills.
Let me just add, Liz, that this account eventually will be migrated into the various utility or those types of accounts. But right now, we're just keeping them in one account so we can kind of understand over a couple year period of time of what the situation looks like. Eventually, they will become line items within the budget versus a lump sum.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sarah?
No, I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
George?
No questions.
Dan?
I don't have any questions.
Jared?
So just a simple one, Chief. So in light of COVID and the pandemic, would you say there are any areas you need to increase due to supplies, training, PPE, or are there any areas you can look at decreasing due to maybe limiting travel, training, seminars, and things like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's going to be a toss-up. When we prepared this budget, COVID wasn't around. If you look at our travel and our training, there's not a lot of money in there. But obviously, we haven't traveled and we haven't trained. So, I would anticipate that maybe the training that we are going to attend is going to be much like, this meeting here. They still require a fee, but, honestly, I'm not quite sure how it's going to play out. As far as the purchases of PPE and things like that, generally, we've experienced some real minor costs with that. A lot of the stuff we're getting from MEMA or FEMA or, donations, or we're working some kind of side deal through the fire chief or something. And, we've done pretty good with that. So I think it's probably going to just be a wash as far as the expenses if this pandemic continues or how long it continues.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Tony?
Just a quick question on the IT consulting company. Has there been an attempt in the past, or is there an intent in the future to potentially put that out to RFP to see if there are better competitive bids? Just kind of a thought process on managing that cost.
Yeah. Here's the problem with that. And there's, to my knowledge, there's probably 3 major companies that support police departments as far as the software goes. I don't see that you're going to appreciate any type of savings with any other company. They may have some portions of their software program that might work better, or, maybe their maintenance fees a little lower, but, they pay you, you'd have to pay them to migrate to their software, which would, require us or require them to take all of our records and make it compatible with their software. So, we started with, it was originally IMC. It's now a company. When it was originally IMC, it was a small company in Grafton that was family owned. I want to say they probably had about 90% of the police departments in Mass. They've since sold it, and it's now, morphed into this great big conglomeration of a company that is nationwide. So, there are some smaller companies that are, cropping up and call me occasionally, but I don't see a big savings with it.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Bob? Once again, you have to unmute.
How am I doing?
You're good.
Chief, just to step back to the training again for 1 second. With COVID-19 around, shouldn't you be planning more training for the officers and equipping them? Who knows where this is going?
Yeah. We've kicked that around a little bit here. I don't know, Bob. Yeah, maybe. A lot of this stuff, we're kind of at the mercy of how this thing turns out. And frankly, we're relying a lot on the Municipal Police Training Council in the event that they do develop some type of, high-end training to dealing with this pandemic, that it would come down through them at no cost. As far as taking private training, I don't know that there's a lot of that out there. I think it's just going to be dealing with, the operational side of dealing with the pandemic itself. So I don't know that training is going to help us unless somebody has a magic answer to it all.
Thank you.
Susan?
Just a couple things. So I just will agree with the statement in terms of utilities taking a couple years to shake out, in working with building projects, commissioning of equipment and everything else, and probably doing business differently during COVID, where people may have been working remotely. So that will take a couple of years. And a little bit to Bob's point about training and, where is this going? I mean, those are specific categories that would be covered under the CARES Act. So if Chief needs additional training or whatever, it is a potential that could be pulled from the CARES Act funding as opposed to hitting his regular budget, which, is beneficial for us as a community. So no questions, just kind of statements.
Thank you very much. Chief, where are you on staffing?
We're full staff right now.
All right, so the people you hired, did they all have, had they all gone to school?
Yes. Yeah. Everyone we've hired over the past, I'd say probably 5 to 7 years, with the exception of one person.
Yeah.
Actually, two people. We've been lucky and fortunate to get academy trained candidates.
Good. That's a good deal. Okay, so at this time, is there anyone else who's participating in this call who has any questions of the chief?
Chief, do you want to run through the capital plan just real briefly? Your
Sure.
items.
So in the capital plan, we have the replacement of the 2 cruisers, which, if you take a look at our fleet and you know a little bit about it, which isn't that hard, we got 9 Mark cruisers that are on the road. That's three per shift and 3 shifts. And, we've got 3 cars right now that are over 100,000. So we'd like to replace them. So, that's the essence of our capital plan.
Well, are you going to replace 3 cars for $112,000?
No, we're going to replace 2. And that's another issue. The cruisers have just gone through the roof. We were looking back a couple of years ago that you could replace a cruiser for $25,000, $27,000. Well, now to replace it with all the equipment and things of that nature, it's they're over $50,000 a piece. And folks, those are there's no real bells and whistles in these things. It's not like we're getting leather interior. It's a basic, general municipal Ford Explorer. So, we're kind of at the mercy again of the cost of the, what things are costing. There's also an expenditure for $18,000 to replace our handguns and associated equipment with that. Our handguns are probably, they're going to be close to 15 years old right now. So we thought it would be a good time to try cycling those out for the same type of firearm, but just a modern one that has, a little newer features and things of that nature on it. And then lastly, like I had alluded to before, the solar for the carport, I think that's just a win-win, especially when our electric bills I don't think they're going to be going down at all. So I think the solar is probably going to help us out with that. I think, we've found in the town and generally it's money well spent.
Is one of the cars are you buying a hybrid?
Well, yeah. So Ford actually has an option right now where the fully outfitted police package Explorer is a hybrid, but it also comes at a cost of $4,500 by the time you're done with it. I've talked to Jim about it. Certainly, I think there's some savings there with the fuel mileage and whatnot. The jury is still out on whether or not these things are like ultra reliable. We've spoken with some folks that repair them at MHQ, and we kind of get a little funny look on their face when we ask about the hybrid. So we're cautiously optimistic that that's the way we're going to go, but we're going to take another look at it and see what people are around us are saying about them.
Is that any additional cost for putting in a charging station?
They're not electric. They're actually, they're a hybrid gas electric, so they charge themselves. Then they don't have a standalone charging setup on them.
Okay. Jared, any comments? I lost him.
Yeah, I gave a thumbs up.
There he is. There he is. Okay. All right. Anything else for the chief? Chief, thanks a lot for participating. We appreciate you being here tonight.
And likewise, thank you, folks. You're always good to us. And unlike some other communities, there never seems to be a struggle. And we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Jim, the next one is the fire ambulance and emergency management.
That's correct. Matt Belcito.
Good evening, folks. Matt Belcito, Fire Chief. I'm 8 years and 1 month into being the chief in the town of Sutton. Department continues to protect and serve the citizens of Sutton with integrity and compassion, and we're here 24/7.
Okay, and your budget?
It's pretty straightforward. I'm sure you have it in front of you. I believe the only increases are raises that the rest of the folks in town are getting. I believe overall it's a 2.35% raise. I mean 2.35% increase over last year's budget. Other than that, it's level funded.
And I don't see anything in the capital plan for you, right?
It is replace car 1 and $30,000 for the old police station renovation project that we have going on. We've been working on the old police station now for coming up on a year. We did 99.9% of the work in-house with members of the fire department. John Kuchar has helped, and honestly, a lot of my personal friends. According to John Kuchar, if the town had to pay for the renovations we've done over there, the town would probably be looking at between $250,000 and $300,000.
Well, thank you.
You can feel free. We're really making good progress. We're probably about at 85%. Businesses in town have really stepped up to the plate too. They heard about the projects that we're doing and the man hours we have into it, and the businesses in town have been very, very supportive of us. We did not actively go out and seek them out. They sought us out.
Thank you, Chief. All right, so Elizabeth?
I have no questions. I appreciate both police and fire, and the town of Sutton does a great job.
Thank you.
We all agree. Sarah?
No questions. Thank you.
George?
Good job.
No questions. Thank you.
Dan?
I just had a question about car 1. What is car 1?
What is that?
What is car 1 under the capital plan?
The chief's car, my car. It's basically a mobile command post. that I respond to all calls with, day or night. I'm on call 24/7 and probably answer high 90% of all calls in the town.
That vehicle was originally purchased for Paul Maynard, the previous fire chief, and it's got a lot of wear and tear on it.
It's coming up on 10 years old. It served its useful purpose per se.
Okay, thank you.
Jared?
No questions, thank you.
Tony?
No questions. Thank you.
Bob?
Okay, no questions.
Susan?
No questions. Thank you.
At this time, is there anyone else who's tuned in who has any questions of the chief? Hearing none. Chief, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. You're doing a great job, and so is all your team there. And thank you for participating tonight.
And I just would like to echo Chief Toll's sentiments. It's been great working in the town of Sutton with all of you, as well as Mr. Smith and all department heads. You've been so supportive, and we just, we have your back 24/7 too. And we appreciate it. All the men and women in the Sutton Fire Department appreciate all your support. It does not go unnoticed.
Thank you. Next is highway, snow, ice, and the transfer station. Matt?
Hello, I'm Matt Stencil. I'm the highway superintendent, the tree warden, and also in charge of the cemeteries and the transfer station. So I have a couple of budgets before you: the highway, the transfer station, cemetery, and the snow and ice. None of which has really changed appreciably. They're all level funded except the contracts with the employees that have increased the 2%, I believe, or 2.5% from the contract. Everything else is more or less the same, except the transfer station increased their sticker fee. So we'll hopefully have a little more cushion with that this year.
Dave's coming back to work, you said, next week?
Yes, he is. Dave will be back next week. So hopefully shortly after that, everything will be back to normal at the transfer station.
All right, let me run it down again. Elizabeth?
I have no questions. Thanks, Matt.
Sarah?
You're welcome.
Sorry, I was double muted here. Just in terms of the highway barn, I know I was going to talk to the capital expenditures, but I don't know if you could talk for a second.
Yeah, sure. The
There are two capital items, Matt: the highway barn and the windows in the barn.
Yeah, basically the windows are, to say inefficient doesn't really do them justice. I mean, they're probably over 80 or 100 years old. They're pretty old. Real glass, no double pane, no anything. So we're losing a lot of heat through them. So it's time to do something about those. And the roof is, it's leaking. It's been leaking slightly for the last couple of years, and we want to get that done before it, causes a lot more problems. So we're hoping to basically, change out all those windows. There's big windows in the garage. If you've never been there, I say big, I think they're like 9 by 9. So it's nice to give us a lot of light, but they're, like I say, they're old with the putty on the edges. I don't know if you're old enough to remember those, but this is really old stuff. So we're hoping to, save on heat by replacing the windows, and the roof is just time. It's time to, to get that before it causes any problems.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
George?
Just one question. Do you anticipate any cost increases with the transfer station and the disposal of cardboard? That's been a pressing issue.
So far we're doing pretty good. We're not paying for it yet. There was a time we got paid for it. Well, we're paying the trucking, but as far as disposal of it, it's been a wash. We've been able to maybe get a small check. The trucking's about is 130. We're maybe getting checks for 20 or 30. There was a time we got a check for a couple hundred for, for a dumpster of it. But right now, the cardboard and the paper and regular recycling has pretty much been a wash. It hasn't increased hugely on us yet. But some of those things used to pay a little bit. And now we essentially dump it for free. But the market has a lot of, uncertainty because of the way everything went down with China changing the way that they did things. And but so far it's been pretty stable for us.
And one other question: the building over in the Manchog area, right behind the old library, is there any plans to rehab, fix that, or?
You mean the old? Well, it was an old fire station. Now it's an old cemetery building.
Yes.
Yeah. It's really not in that bad a shape. We use it currently. It stores the material, some of the equipment and stuff for the cemetery people. So we do use that. Not to say it couldn't use any work, but there's no leaks. It locks. Everything stays out of the sun and rain. So nobody really works out of there on a regular basis. It's the the cemetery commissioners, and then the cemetery maintenance guy uses it for storage between our place and that place to keep all the lawnmowers, things like that. But the building is serving a good purpose for us.
Okay. It's also where I drop off my kids for school, so.
Yeah, there's not a lot of action there, but it's good storage.
Thanks. No other questions.
You're welcome.
Dan?
No, I don't have any questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Jared?
The only question is Jim, maybe, I don't know if you can help answer this, but with the Green Communities Act, is there any money available for the window replacement, for upgrading that?
We missed the application period this year. They changed some forms last minute and we didn't catch that form, and so we couldn't apply. Now, the fact is we have received almost $1 million in Green Communities funds, and we've been told that the amount of money we can receive is cut in half. The most we can apply for is $100,000. We planned on applying for LED lights over at the school department, like phase 3 or 4 of the current plan. And the next round of Green Communities is probably next March. That's probably what we will apply for, $100,000 for the school department. That'll have a direct impact on the amount of electricity bills that we pay out of the town and the schools. So the windows down at the highway department are in serious need of repair. There are vines growing through it. It's pretty atrocious situation, but it's a relatively smaller cost compared to, LED lights at the school department.
Got it. Thank you. That's it for me. Thanks, Matt.
Tony?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob?
No questions. Thank you.
Susan?
Just to clarify on the property there, Matt, you have the building where I think you're talking about, where your offices are for the windows and the roof, and then there's another building that's caving into itself?
Oh.
Is that?
Oh, that's not ours.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. So,
yeah. That's our neighbor.
Okay, so we have no liability over that building.
No, it's privately owned.
Privately owned.
Okay, that's good to know. And I know there was discussion at one point about relocating, the highway building and barn and the fuel tanks. Is that kind of off the table for now? Maybe still out there in the 10, 20-year horizon?
Matt, I can go ahead and answer that. It's
Okay.
It's still on the horizon. The cost to do that project down at Shaw Farm, where we had originally planned off of Central Turnpike, was over $10 million, and there was no reimbursement funds available for that. So it just was sort of cost prohibitive to even consider it. So we are looking to stay on site, repair the facility as best we can. The building falling in on itself is privately owned. We've had discussions with that owner about potentially acquiring it, but nothing came of that. So we are looking to stay there right now, but our options remain open if there's a good site that's affordable in the future. So.
No, I mean, I agree. I think it's money well spent to, take care of the windows and the roof at that location. It's convenient for all town vehicles and everything else. Just curious where that plan was going. So thanks.
Yeah.
That's it. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Matt, I don't want to make any work for you, but I'll tell you that we took single pane windows out of a church in Grafton and did the replacement. And we put them on eBay, and we were shocked at how much money we got for them. They were over 100 years old also. But Jim has plenty of time, so maybe he'll sell them for you.
I'll get right on that.
So again, at this time, does anyone who is tuned in have any questions of Matt?
Yeah, if he doesn't have a use for that glass, maybe I'll be interested in it.
If it comes out in one piece, I'll let you know.
No, we actually had people bidding for it, so we were kind of surprised. Anyway,
I know people with the antique clocks. My father collects them, and they use it for the clocks, to restore clocks. So yeah, there's a market out there for it.
I will agree. There is a market for that glass, and I know where a lot could go.
Matt, I think I'd start raising the price.
Excellent.
Well, Matt, thank you again. Thank you, and we appreciate everything you do, and we know how you guys get around in this last storm and everything. So, thank you so much for you and all your crew, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
I think we should have a live auction via Zoom with the town and use the glass money to help with our budget. I'm joking.
Yeah, it'll probably be posted on Municipid at the right time. And you can bid on it then.
All right, well, all right.
Sorry, Jared, but.
I've said enough. Okay, next on the agenda is the school department. Who do we have from the school department?
You got Paul Brennan, chair of the committee. You got Ted Friend, superintendent, and then a whole cast of characters. Some of the school committees on, as well as Di can bring up the presentation, and I think Nancy, the business administrator, also.
All right. So Paul, are you gonna?
I'll give you sort of the quick rundown, and then we can go whichever direction you want with questions to whoever makes the most sense. How's that work?
Thank you very much.
And I think that the message is very much the same as Dr. Fitzpatrick, in that we've put together a budget. We provided it to you some time ago, and really have not made changes to that. We haven't voted an additional budget. I did bring in a couple of bullets just around, so what has COVID done to us? And I think, I'm sorry, I've got two different screens now popping on me. One of the things I just wanted to sort of point out right now is all of our revenue sources, like everybody else, like Fitzpatrick was saying, are just not solid enough to try to change the budget yet. We've been spending more time focusing on what kinds of reductions can we have pull in for this year to hopefully carry as much cash forward as we can. All of the replacement positions that we had in line have been held, with the exception of two. They're retirement replacements for the school nurse and elementary guidance. Those are two positions we're pretty certain we're going to need next year. We have changed the priorities a little bit for FY21, and it's just adding a couple at the top. What state requirements exist, we're going to have to address, and those are still in flux, but as we learn more, we clearly are going to have to make some adjustments. I mentioned the cash reserves. We're having conversations and trying to think about how do we make sure we've got money for what I keep saying are sort of the non-recurring expenses. But we do anticipate that mid-year we could bump into having to change, much like we did this year, except we want to make sure we've got cash ready if we have to do that. Then the third bullet gets right back to its school department. It's going to be running this year, next year, and for years after that. Our focus very much is on the children, on class size, and on the offerings we have for them. So we don't want to lose sight of that, but we do understand that 21 is going to be unique. We were intending on completing a contract that would have started next year with the STA. That's obviously on hold. We're looking at trying to get a one-year agreement as we sort out. And then just a couple of quick bullets on for FY21. We think we're likely going to see reductions in the budget on smaller items, field trips, sports, depending on how those work out. We think we're likely going to see increases in the 21 budget. How we clean and maintain the facilities, if we end up with more remote learning, even if we open the building, if we have some situations that require additional remote learning, we think that might impact substitute staff. And then once they get the kids back in and start to take a look at where we at, we want to be ready for remediation as required. And then crazy unknowns, busing. If we find that people aren't using buses, do we have too many? If we find that there are state requirements for how you can load up a bus, do we have too few? We just really don't know where that goes. And then sort of the piece I mentioned before around students and staff that for whatever reason in this new environment aren't able to work in the same environment we're used to. What will that do cost-wise? So I just wanted to get those bullets sort of what's running around. In terms of what are we doing right now, we would typically in the summer slow down some of the meetings. We'd have the first meeting of the month, but not the second. We're going to continue to have the bi-monthly meetings to get updates as quick as we can. We're continuing to ask the administration to focus on what in the FY20 budget can you reduce, can we hold forward. Obviously, we ask Ted to work with Jim and state officials as much as possible to get a sense of numbers. The state numbers, boy, anybody gets a good guess on that, that'd be good to hear. And then we're, as I had mentioned before, starting to talk about revolving accounts. We say revolving accounts, we've got a bunch. The reality is that's circuit breaker for SPED, and it's a school choice account. The other revolving accounts, there'll be some money there, but it's earmarked for particular purposes. So it's not going to be a big chunk that I think we would look at in 21. The remainder of the slides are slides you've seen. I think it talks, really we had an opportunity. This is, I think the district has got itself in a great spot. We are more than stable over the last couple of years. We have been focusing on improvements, and I think that's been showing. This hasn't been a great, I just really think we could have come into 21 in a far better spot. The slides that do talk about that, and as I said, because we are going to do education in 21 and in 22 and moving forward, the offerings we have improved. We have more focus on social emotional learning, particularly in the lower grades, which is, boy, this year going to matter. I think we've gotten to a much better approach at bringing 8th grade into Sutton. You'll recall last year the numbers we had that had chosen to choice out, and particularly looking at Blackstone Valley. I think we're starting to try to figure out what do we do to make sure that's the right choice for all of the children who do that. The integration of the schools has improved. At the high school level, the independent study, the half-year classes, re-engaging with the 8th graders, as I said, has, I think, really been a plus. On a budgeting side, as well as in strategy, we've gotten better at talking long-term planning. You see in the slides, we look at next year, but we're also trying to put more detail, more usability in longer-term planning in the budget. This year, one of our goals was to have a plan around structural changes to the building. What schools do we have? What grades are in those schools? How do we support that best with a budget that we're looking forward more than a year on? The COVID has impacted that timing. We certainly wouldn't do anything without an actual plan. and without opportunity for others, for everyone to speak into that. So that won't end in 20. We'll carry into 21. Sort of last bullets. SPED's always the wild card. It's funny. Right now, SPED is sort of the most stable number we have. The budget we have before this started, we were about 500K off, which is pretty good for what we walk into. 400 of the 500K was SPED. In a different world, we'd be having a similar conversation that we have a lot of years, is that the SPED expenses fluctuate so much. And I think that Ted and Jim have been working very hard on finding ways to sort of provide the shock absorber so that we can handle that better also. Goes to the long-term thinking. Those are the first 4 or 5 slides that you maybe had a chance to read through, but it's sort of the summary of what they are. If folks want, we can jump down to what the budget was, the budget proposal. As I said, we were off by about 500K, about 400 of that SPED, and it's anybody's guess. We'll keep meeting every couple of weeks to sort out where it lands.
So Paul, do you want to go to Ted, or is that it?
Well, I would open it up for questions if you all have, or if you want to give us direction. As I said, you've had the package. We can go through the numbers, but I think it's sort of the same as the past, and as Dr. Fitzpatrick has done. Those numbers were our best estimate before this started, and we're going to have to keep working once we get real revenue numbers.
All right, well then let me, so there's no change in what you have on the screen here to what you gave us in the book, is that correct?
That's right, that's right.
So let me just ask, let's just sort of see if we can't get things going, and let me do a poll here. Elizabeth, do you have any questions?
Well, I found the slide with the enrollment, the decreasing enrollment, interesting. I don't know if that's something we're going to get to eventually, or.
We certainly do watch the enrollment. It's kindergarten, for example. I think the number is fairly low in this. We're now at 99. That number is 1 or 2 higher than prior years, but has I would say leveled out a bit. So I think you're going to have a hard time predicting the trend without getting into what the town is doing for house turnover. But I do think that we've leveled off. It's sort of nice to see the kindergarten numbers go up. As I say, the hit we took last year going to Blackstone Valley was pretty significant. It's a little bit more normal this year. Yeah, Di, it's way down at the bottom if you're. There you go. So yeah, so there you see the 1256. The number in 24 is a drawn trend line. I think things that we're looking at right now really make that a hard number to take action right away, right? But the numbers certainly are floating in that space, and I don't think we're going to see in the 13s or 1400s anytime soon, unless you're talking about a lot of house turnover.
And there's the budget continues to increase as enrollment decreases, and I don't know if there's any way to kind of bridge that gap or.
I don't think so. I think the reality is as the enrollment has decreased, some of the expenses that are very much directly related to that number have been absorbed. It's part of what has made it easier to say we've got a budget that's been stable, that's been able to improve, that's been able to have offerings. So there's no doubt that when you go from 1370 to 1250, what that does save, and it's not a directly correlated, but what that does save, we reapply and use for the students we have, for the offerings we have.
Thank you.
Sarah?
Yeah, I just have one question, and it's I don't know as much about this. I see that the special education out of district tuitions went up, quite significantly over the last couple of years, and I wonder if there's a corresponding decrease in staff needed in Sutton to, do they balance each other out, or how does that work in terms of we're paying more to send them out of district? Does that mean we need less aides or something like that to service these students?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's and I want to ask Ted to step in, but I think one of the things you're going to find is that number, even more than regular education, is very hard to tie to the number of children. You can have SPED go up by 150K in a year for a new student, so it would have absolutely no impact for the students that are in the building, yet you'll see a huge spike for one person. We do on occasion have a year where there's somebody who we've been providing services in-house and it gets to a point where they move out, and that will change her. Ted, go ahead and correct everything I just said there.
No, so to answer your question, the answer is yes, but it's never going to be a dollar for dollar. So what we're able to do, because we've had a couple of students in the high school move out of the district, we're going to take a special education teacher that is currently in the middle school. The position straddled the middle and high school for our students, and because some of these students moved to private placements this year, that position is going to move down to the elementary school. And what we're going to do is take one of our elementary special education teachers and have that teacher replace one of our elementary teachers who's retiring. So in that regard, we were able to replace and not have to replace one of our elementary teachers. And that's not reflected in the budget. This is a result of, this happened after the school committee voted that budget. So it's a savings, an overall savings of about $90,000 in the elementary budget.
Okay, thank you. That was helpful.
George?
No questions.
Dan?
No questions.
Jared?
So Paul, in light of like Liz's question around enrollment dropping, at what point do you start looking at different options for restructuring to provide some economies of scale?
Yeah.
Because the trend, the fact, I know you can't predict the future,
right?
But looking at the facts of the trend we're on, it is a downward trend. And so at what point does that kick in infrastructure, sort of structural change to the way the schools are set up?
If this year had been as we all hoped it would have been, it would have started this year. That's in fact the piece I was trying to describe. In 20, our intent was to have a documented plan for what should the structure look like, and that quite frankly would look at things like should we maintain a separate 4 separate schools, or are we better off with 3 schools, and how would the grades be moved around? Our guidance to the administration has been, we very much need to look at that. We need to understand how that works, but we do not want to make a change like that without a plan, without an opportunity for people to work through it. So this year, at the beginning of this year, our intent was to walk out of the year with a plan that we would have worked through in 21 and then in 22 have been able to execute on it. Frankly, I think it's going to be difficult to do it in 22. I think it's going to carry into 21, but yeah, obviously it's something that's been on our list, and if we can recover faster, we will.
Thank you. That's all.
Tony?
No questions. Thank you.
Bob?
How are we doing?
We're doing great. How are you doing?
Not bad. I can find a laptop now and then. I have a question about the town is planning to give $400,000 to the schools. Am I correct, Jim?
That's correct.
Where does that reflect in the school budget?
That's we understand that it would increase by 400, and that's reflected in our revenues from the town, which is the largest portion, but it's already in there.
It's already in your total?
In this budget as presented.
The 400, and it's spread throughout, or? There's no
Right.
one place we can find it.
There's the only one place you could find it is if you look at what are the revenues used to pay for this budget. But it's not like that 400 went specifically to teachers or specifically to photocopy machines.
No, I understand that. I understand that. Okay, one more question. We do our own school busing now?
No, there's a mix. We still use AA transportation for what you would see as the vast majority of the transportation. So all of the regular kids coming in and out. We have a school bus. We now have a white van, which allows, or a minibus, allows for usage. Let's just vary the drivers. We own that. And then we have a collection of, again, I'll go to Ted if he knows, but call it 9 minivans that we would use for special education runs or for runs to, there's a group going to Whiten's Community Center, things of that nature. So it's a hybrid model.
So,
thank you.
The local, I'm sorry, the local transportation that we.
Hi, Ted.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Something happened to my Zoom. So the local transportation that, I don't know why this is not, oh, there you are. I'm sorry. The local transportation that we have in-house is strictly for special education. So we have 7 vans, and these vans transport district placements. We have 2 buses, a large bus, and then a smaller bus. And the smaller bus is a wheelchair bus because we do have wheelchair students. We also use the buses for sports transportation as well. Other than that, all regular transportation comes from AA transportation.
Okay, I have no more questions.
Thank you. Susan?
First, I just want to say I appreciate firsthand all the challenges that the school has going into not only landing 20, but going into 21. There's a lot of changes that come out of DESE all the time, and there's a lot of unknowns, so I appreciate all that. In terms of getting back to enrollment, I'm just going to echo what a lot of my colleagues have already said. If you look on the DESE website, you go back to when we had 1,600 students, it shows there's 99.5 FTEs for staff. And today we have 300 less, 1,300 students, and 99 FTEs and staff. So 300 student loss, not a single loss of FTE, according to the DESE website. So I do appreciate that you're looking at restructuring. This has been coming for a long time. I would be very disappointed that this is not reflected in an FY22 budget. I understand the need for a plan. However, like I said, this has been coming for a long time. So for schools, for administrations, You know, the FTEs, according to DESI, have not gone down. So I think for 22, and I know that the planning for 22 happens fairly quickly as soon as you get back to school. So I would hope that the school committee will be able to reflect some of these changes for 22.
For sure, we very much hoped we were going to walk out of 20 with a plan. But I think while we all agree we've got to do this, the question is, how do you do it? How do you do it in an appropriate fashion? How do you make sure you get input from all of the concerned parties? And even then, I guess I would just say, while I think there's improvement, the notion of class size and direct staff in contact with children, I'm not so sure that we get down to a linear, that we do the math and we say, therefore you're 30 high. But for sure we recognize, as you say, that the numbers don't support, or the numbers really cause us to have to take a look at basic structural questions.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that it's just a linear equation. I get that.
Right.
But like I said, it's been coming for a long time. So I would appreciate that the school committee, has this reflected for 22. And looking at, I think somewhere in your slide presentation was something about the stabilization. I appreciate students moving in, and I understand what that cost impact can be with just one student. Looking at the stabilization, if I remember correctly, it was maybe around 350.
That's correct.
Yeah, so a one student move in could be north of 100. So, maybe that fund is a little high. Maybe, it coming into one of these budget years, you may look to appropriate a little of that and, maybe put that reserve down to maybe a 2-student reserve. Again, because these are students that move in after the move-in law date.
Yeah, for sure that the notion that we're trying to work with Jim in that way, and I really do appreciate what Ted and Jim have done there, I think is great. The idea, much like the power and sorting that out, that we know what the right number is or how to work it. I think it's still early there, but.
Right, just, knowing that you have that. And I do think it's a very well-funded stabilization is what I'm saying. So if you get into a stretch, and I don't believe you've used that account, which is great, but it is there. So those are really my comments. The enrollment doesn't support where we are, that's all.
Thank you, Susan. Paul, at the beginning when you talked about open positions, and I understand you're going to replace 2, it's a nurse and another place. How many positions are you holding open?
Rats, it's in the slide. I can see Ted wants to say it's 5 or 6, but the other is the guidance counselor at the elementary school. The two that they did act on are the nurse and the guidance counselor.
Right. So, but how many are you holding open?
Sure. So right now, as I said, the special education teacher will go down and replace one of the elementary openings. So that's a wash. We have a high school English teaching position that is open, and we have an early learning center position that's open. Now, depending on what ends up happening, we will maybe looking at the number of students per grade. We'll shift some elementary folks or early learning center folks around. So English, high school, one other elementary position, so that's 2. We're not going to hire the health teacher that's in the presentation. With COVID-19 coming on, we just did not. We're not ready to do that. We're also not going to replace the 2 library assistant positions in the elementary school because I think libraries are going to look very different next year. So it's really just 2 teaching positions that we're talking about that have not, oh, I'm sorry, and the assistant principal for the middle high school. We're looking to replace that position with an internal candidate as long as we have the funding to do that.
Thank you. Is there anyone who's, again, tuned in, or any of the committee members who have any other questions they'd like to ask at this time? Okay, hearing none. Ted, Paul, and everybody who's on here, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I know it's tough. As I look at things in here, like the after-school care and the other stuff, I mean, who knows what's going to happen and what school's going to look like. We can what if, I guess, forever. So I wish you all the best of luck, and I know you're going to have a busy summer. And thank you again for making time to be with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Al.
Appreciate it.
The next on the agenda for the committee are the warrant. And so what Jim and Tim would like to do is to walk through the 13 articles, explain them to us, and then we will close the public hearing and then vote. If everyone's in agreement, I'll turn it back to Jim, and we can begin with Article 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, as you mentioned, there are 13 articles. There are no controversial items on this. It's just pretty much what it takes to fund town government to start 2021. At the right time, we will consider, the sewer project, planning and zoning articles, purchasing land up on Waters Road, and and others. But now is just not the time. Article number 1 is to receive reports of town offices and committees. This is a standard article. We have that every year. We haven't received reports from committees since the Charter Bylaw Review Committee that presented, and I think they presented last 2014. Article number 2 is to authorize the cemetery commissioners to employ themselves. This is a requirement under 268A, the conflict of interest law, that the legislative body, which is town meeting in the town of Sutton, needs to authorize the cemetery commissioners to employ themselves. So that's the purpose of that article. Article number 3 is the same for the Board of Health. This authorizes them to employ themselves. We used to have somebody on the Board of Health that was able to do inspections. I don't believe we've had anybody in recent past that has performed any inspections, but it is there as a potential placeholder in case of need. But an article that we have there every year. Article number 4 is to fund the Sewer Department Enterprise Fund. That account is staying the same. There are no changes other than cost of living adjustments in that budget. Article number 5 is the Transfer Station Enterprise Fund, and as you heard from Matt Stencil, the sticker fee is going up $10 to $50 total. Right now, transfer station stickers can be purchased online by going to www.suttonma.org. I've done it. It's very simple. We probably have had, I don't know, maybe 70 to 80 individuals already purchase transfer station stickers online. So people are following directions, and hopefully we'll be able to do all the transfer stickers being sold online. The collector's department gets that information, the registration, and the amount that's funded, and then they mail out the sticker to the individual requesting it and paying for it. So it's a pretty seamless process. It just takes a little bit of time to go through. Article number 6 is the town budget. We've talked about that. We're going to do our best, and we may need to revise it at some point in the fall. Article number 7 is the capital plan. Again, the first 8, 10 articles are the same every single year. Article number 7 has always been the capital plan. Again, I mentioned that the capital plan has been cut in half. It was originally $1 million. Now it's $540,000 and another $67 in sewer enterprise funds. So it's not a general fund appropriation. And generally those are just necessary items for us to continue. Article number 8 is to pay prior year invoices, often referred to as bad bills. We have 2. They are Medicaid bills from the school department for $1,132. Just they happened. We found them after the fiscal year ended, and you know, we would like permission to pay those bills. Article number 9 is to see if the town could borrow money for in anticipation of Chapter 90 funds. This is a normal article that we have had. We haven't had to use it again, but it's there just in case we run into that scenario. Article number 10 is to take money out of the compensated absences fund to pay for the lieutenant's sick leave, vacation leave buyback. As most of you know, our Lieutenant Dave Perry is retiring this year at some point in July or August. He's been a great asset to the town of Sutton for so many years. He will be missed, but he is owed approximately $45,000 in sick leave buyback. The town froze sick leave buyback for all department heads in 2006, and Dave's been an employee well before 2006. So it is owed to him, and we want to pay through it through the compensated absences fund that was created and funded last year through $200,000 in free cash. Article number 11 is to appropriate $100,000 in free cash to the general stabilization fund. That'll bring this general stabilization fund to roughly $2.6 million, above the 8% of operating revenues minus debt exclusion debt. That is the select board's policy. We have exceeded that number. Our goal is to create an additional recurring revenue source for our budget. We've talked about recurring revenue as a significant issue in this town, and this is just another way to create a recurring revenue from a pot of money that will continue to grow just at a slightly lesser rate because we're taking the interest off of that account to pay for operations. But we still have $2.6 million in that account, and just keeping it there. Article number 12 is to pay for items that town meeting authorized last year, $696,600 to pay for repaving Central Turnpike, purchasing a fire apparatus, engine 3 down in Wilkes, and a highway truck. I think it's number 12, 9 or 12. And this is the payment out of the capital stabilization fund that we need to do mechanically to pay for those items. And article number 13 is just another placeholder. It's to fund underfunded accounts. I don't believe we're gonna need this article to fund anything. I think it's typically used for snow and ice, transferring free cash to snow and ice. Our snow and ice budget came in under budget. We spent less than the $200,000 appropriated. So we should be fine with that. And any other transfers will be done through through departments, which the Board of Selectmen approves and the Finance Committee needs to vote in concurrence. But that process generally takes place in late June, July period of time. But that's it. Those are the articles, short and simple. Most of them, all of them are funding articles, but there are no other types of articles that could create some controversy.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
For those who are logged in once again, does anyone have any questions of Jim? Hearing none, then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I motion to close the public hearing.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Yeah.
Opposed? I'm hearing none, and we will close the public hearing, and then now we'll go to continue so that we can vote on these. In a discussion that I had with Jim prior to the call, and so I'm going to propose this, is that since there are 9 of us, is that we'll do each article. Again, we'll need a motion and a second, and then we'll have discussion. And then as we vote, I'll just call for a vote rather than a roll call, because there's so many of us. I'm going to call for those in favor, those opposed, and any abstentions. And as long as it is unanimous, then we will accept it that way. If there's a negative, or whichever way, then we'll do a roll call. So without objection, that's the way we will proceed. So Article 1, which is to receive the town reports, I will entertain a motion.
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 Second.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, I declare it passed 9-0. Article 2 is for the cemetery so they can employ themselves. Motion, please.
So moved.
Motion to
Second.
approve.
Second? Discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Hearing none, I declare it passed 9-0. Article 3 is for the Board of Health to employ themselves. Motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Hearing none, I declare it passed unanimously 9-0. Article 4 is for the sewer department. Let's see. For the sewer department, motion, please.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? I declare it passed 9-0. Article 5 is for the transfer station. Motion?
Motion.
Second? Discussion? All those in favor, again, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Declare it unanimous, 9-0. Article 6 is the town budget. Motion, please.
Motion to approve.
Attaboy. Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? I declare it passed 9-0. Article 7 is the capital plan. Hey, Bob, how about a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second,
Second.
discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? I declare it passed 9-0. Article 8 is to pay past year's invoices. I understand there are 2. So a motion?
Motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second. Hey, they got to speak up a little.
I'm talking as loud as I can. Okay. Discussion? Forget where I am. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed? Abstention? I declare it passed 9-0. Article 9 is to borrow money for Chapter 90 if needed. Motion?
Motion.
Come on. All right, second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? I declare it passed 9-0. Article 10 is the retirement buyback for a retiring police officer. Take a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? I declare it passed 9-0. Article 11 is to transfer $100,000 of free cash to the stabilization fund. Motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Did I get a second?
Second.
Oh, thank you. Discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Again, declare passed 9-0. Article 12 is to pay for the paving, the fire engine, and a truck. Motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Thank you again. 9-0 in the affirmative. Article 13 is a placeholder for transfers as needed. Motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? I declare it passed 9-0. So that's it. Is there any other discussion? I'm gonna, if everybody's okay, well, it's not on here, so I can't do it anyway. All right. I just want to say thank you. I know this is difficult, and I really appreciate everybody's, jumping in and being here. All 9 of us showed up, and it's a lot. Sarah, for you, for the minutes, when it comes to the recommendations, we've been requested to make them as simple as possible. Something like the board voted 9-0 to approve.
Okay.
All right, and because they're trying to move the town meeting as quickly as possible.
Sure. Yep. Easy enough.
Jim, do you have any final comments?
No, thank you, everybody, for your support. And, we'll get through this.
Well, it's 7:45, so I'll entertain a motion to retire.
Motion to retire.
How
Again?
about a second? How about a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, hey, and no opposed. Hey, thank you very much. And Tim, thank you also. Everybody have a great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Jim.